All right, hey, what's going on, podcast world? This is your boy Tyrone Desperado, and you're in for another installment of Straight Talk No Chaser. I'm going to throw it to my podcast partner so he can introduce himself. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's going on, everybody? Y'all know me from the podcast, life, relationships, and everything in between. We got a real good topic for y'all today, so I'm going to let Ty take us into it since it was his idea.
All right, so I figure what would be a very, very good topic, especially in this political climate, is really discussing the need for an increase in the minimum wage across the board, you know what I'm saying, across the whole entire United States. Now, I mean, this is something we always wanted to talk about. It's something that we've been passionate about for a while, but there was a particular situation at a new job that I'm working at that kind of sparked it and said, okay, this has to happen now. This discussion has to happen now. And one of the young guys that I work with, he's a 20-year-old college, no, he's 19, I'm sorry, he's a 19-year-old college student here in New Jersey. And we were just kind of, sitting in the break room just talking and stuff like that. And he usually goes to lunch every single day, like out to eat. And this particular day he decided to stay in the break room. So I'm like, what's going on? You normally go out to eat and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, man, listen, he was like, I really can't afford it. He was like, to go there to buy a sandwich is $8, and that's an hour's worth of work for me, just for that one sandwich.
Crazy.
And that kind of hit me hard because it's like, okay, in a state where you live in, you should not be able to question buying a lunch for yourself. Because if you live in a state where it's $8 for a sandwich, and, I mean, you're from New Jersey, so you know how it is down here. That's how much it costs for a sandwich. And this is at a deli. We're not talking about like a five-star restaurant. We're just talking about like a corner deli or a corner bodega, you know what I'm saying, where you can go and buy a sandwich. The amount of money that people make should coincide with the cost of living. So if that's what it costs to feed one person, $8 just at a corner deli, you should be making more money. You should not have to question whether I'm going to just bring some ramen noodles to work or I'm just going to go down to the store and buy me a quick sandwich. Right. And that's kind of sad that a grown person who works full time at a company that's worth $2.7 million, the company I work for is worth $2.7 million. Why does this young man have to, choose between not getting the lunch that he wants that just feeds one person?
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? And it's kind of crazy. It just kind of hit me thinking, wow, adults should make enough to support themselves. Now, I'm going to refer really quickly before you chime in. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to report really quickly from this website that I found. Is on Mike.com, and basically they did a ton of research, and they said nowhere in the United States can an adult working 40 hours a week on minimum wage afford a one-bedroom apartment.
Mm-hmm.
No, not in no state in this country. If you work 40 hours a week full time, you cannot afford a one-bedroom apartment without paying more than 30% of your income, which is sad. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm gonna give you I'm gonna run a couple states really quick.
Wait, let me chime in.
Okay, go ahead.
I've been itching to do these numbers, and I'm glad that you just mentioned what you just mentioned because it's a good segue.
Yeah.
So Ty said that you should be able to, as a consumer, somebody who works full time, you should be able to shop and afford the things that not just you need, but some of the things you want too, and it should coincide with, not just to me the type of work that you do, but if you work, you should be able to make a wage that you're allowed to live your life comfortably. And that's the difference between what some people are calling a livable wage and what a lot of these states call minimum wage. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some numbers real quick before I throw it back to Ty, because there's a long-standing saying that men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And that's true. Numbers are just facts and figures, but here's the problem. Numbers are subjective. And when you look at a topic like minimum wage, there's not too many other topics that are vastly different across every state, that you look at when it comes to these types of numbers. So, first of all, just to separate out, the federal minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour. Now, unless you do a federal job, that doesn't affect you. The vast majority of the country and the people who work 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 and live in states that have their own mandated minimum wage, and it's followed by the states. Now, the majority of states, the minimum wage is somewhere between $7.50 and $9.50. That's the majority of the states. There's 5 states: Alabama, Louisiana, Missouri, South Carolina, and Tennessee have no state minimum wage. None. That means these companies in these states can pay you whatever they feel like paying you.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the problem with that. A lot of other states are saying that they want that right as well.
Of course.
These companies are saying they don't feel like they should have to be mandated how they run their business to pay employees anything other than what they feel they should want to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 states, Georgia and Wyoming. And this is significant because I started my first job as a freshman in high school. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts in Colonial, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked, at that time, you could work with working papers at 14. And I did probably 10, 14 hours a week. Just a couple of days. You couldn't really work that much. It was only 3 hours that you were limited to work, if it was a school day and things like that.
Yeah, I remember those days. Mine was at Taco Bell.
Now at that time, minimum wage was $5.15 an hour. There's 2 states, Georgia and Wyoming, in 2017 that are still paying $5.15 an hour. We're not talking about high school kids trying to save for their first car. We're talking about grown people with mortgages and families who live in these states who have to try and survive off of that income. It's laughable. Mm-hmm. Having said that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 states as I look down my list. There's 14 states that the state minimum wage is equal to the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. And this is as of January 2017. It's Iowa, Indiana, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, North Dakota, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Texas, Utah, Virginia, and Washington. A lot of these states are expensive to live in, and the minimum wage is $7.25 an hour.
Wow.
Now, the rest of the states, like I said, every other state, other than the ones that I just mentioned in those other 3 categories, where it's equal to, less than, and no minimum wage at all, the rest of the states are pretty much somewhere in between $7.25 and around $9.30. Now, here's what they did in Massachusetts. At the end of
that's your state you're in now, right?
Yeah. I'm currently a resident of Massachusetts. I'm a Jersey native, but I haven't been in Jersey for 10 years, so I don't know what the minimum wage is in New Jersey. Let me see.
$8.38.
It looks like
$8.38.
That's what I'm just looking down my list. So here's the thing. At the end of 2014, Massachusetts came up with a plan, and they said, okay, we realize we do need to raise the minimum wage, and it's commendable. Here's the problem. They said they were going to raise the minimum wage by $3.50. It was $7.50. They wanted it to be $11 an hour, which is what it currently is now. Here's the problem. These companies got together and said, well, if you guys are going to do this, we need time. Because if we have to raise the minimum wage by $3.50 an hour for every employee we have, we're going to end up laying a lot of people off and firing a lot of people. So the state said, okay, we'll implement a 3-year plan. So here's what they did. At the end of 2014, right around third quarter, they raised the minimum wage from $7.50 where it was to $8 an hour. A few months later, January 2015, they raised it to $9. The following January 2016, it went up to $10. And as of this past January 2017, minimum wage in Massachusetts went up to $11 an hour. Mm-hmm. Now, that's commendable because it's something. And now they are officially one of the highest states for minimum wage. Mm-hmm. But here's the problem. And shout out to all you college students who definitely have a full plate with, trying to earn your degree, trying to make your way into the world. But if you're someone who has kids, someone living on your own for the first time, someone who, doesn't have a bunch of roommates, someone who has a family, you're married, you're paying a mortgage, or you're trying to acquire that American dream, you're trying to get a house for the first time. It's impossible. And luckily, I've been fortunate enough that I haven't made minimum wage since my early 20s, fortunately.
Yeah.
But even making what I make now, which is close to $20 an hour with what I do now, you still need a two-income family and sometimes even a second job. You know, like nowadays, it's impossible. The biggest problem with minimum wage to me is that when you track back, let's go all the way back to the 1930s. 2 years after the Great Depression, the economy's starting to recover, companies are starting to hire again and expand, consumers their confidence is rising a little in the financial institutions, they're starting to put their money back in banks again, because as we know, when the Great Depression hit, everybody ran to pull their money out of banks, the majority of them only to find out there was no money left.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since then, when you go back the past 50, 60 years, the rate of inflation has not kept up with the rate of the increase and the minimum wage from state to state, nationwide. It's not even close.
Yeah, they said in 20 years,
mm-hmm.
I think, or 20, maybe even a little bit more than 20 years, it has not kept up. The minimum wage, with inflation and the cost of living has not kept up. And I was saying earlier, this article that I came up with on Mike.com,
mm-hmm.
basically what they listed for each state was basically the amount of hours on that state's minimum wage that you would have to work, a single person with no children, to
mm-hmm.
afford a one-bedroom apartment without paying more than 30% of your income. Now, you got to understand, like, you may say, well, 30% of your income, maybe that should go towards your rent. No, because you have car payments, you have health insurance, you have recreation, you have food, you have a life to keep up with. You have to put money in your savings, you have to put money in retirement, you have 401k, you have this, and that,
mm-hmm.
and the other. So that's a lot, especially when it's not going towards a mortgage to own your own home. We're talking about a one-bedroom apartment.
Yep.
And the highest in this country right now is Maryland. In Maryland, in order to afford a one-bedroom apartment, you have to work 101 hours a week.
It's crazy.
In New Jersey and D.C., they're second place
mm-hmm.
with 100 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Your state right now, you're living in, you got to work 87 hours in 1 week in order for a single person to afford a one-bedroom apartment.
And here's the kicker, and it's
Connecticut, 84%.
Yeah.
84 hours. California is 92, Nevada 71, Texas
mm-hmm.
73. These are some of the highest ones I'm reading out. Now let's go into the Midwest, where the cost of living is normally a little bit lower. Colorado, 75 hours a week. Oklahoma, 59 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois, 75 hours a week. Florida, 77 hours a week. Georgia, 72 hours a week. You have to work in order to afford. And let's talk about low-income jobs. These are not easy jobs. You're on your feet all day.
Right.
You're working 12-hour shifts, minimal breaks. You have bosses who don't give a crap about you. You could barely afford health care, which means you're sick a lot. You're calling
mm-hmm.
out a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the life you're living, the quality of life is down the tubes, and you got to work a lot of hours.
Exactly.
And it's draining for people.
Absolutely. And, that is close to home because I'm someone who, for the past 10 years, I've always worked 2 and 3 jobs. Mm-hmm. Now, this is the first time in my adult life at 33 that I don't work multiple jobs. Yeah. And I have what's considered to be a pretty good job. The problem is my caseload is so heavy at work that I do work 100 hours, every pay period. The problem with that is, like Ty was saying, because of all the expenses and how much it costs to live in this day and age, with my caseload being what it is and the amount of hours I put in, I don't have the time if I wanted to do a second job. So it's pretty much like you got to make do with what you have and do the best that you can. Now, if you throw in some kids in the mix and then you take into consideration the fact that 30% of your income or more, depending where you live, is going towards rent, and then if you're an adult and you taxes are coming out of your check, that's another 26 to 30% of your check going to taxes before you even see it. That's 60%. What do you have left? Now, if you are lucky enough to work for a company where, there is a healthcare package, that's another 15 to 20% out of your check.
Yep.
Forget about a 401k. Forget about being able to put money to the side. And then it's no wonder why our generation is in so much trouble with the forecasted, with the projections of what Social Security is going to be left for us. There's little to none. How can you plan for your future? Our last podcast episode, we talked about, financial freedom and, struggling with credit and things like that and lacking that financial education. But when you talk about minimum wage and you break down the whole situation and the cost of living and everything, even for someone who has that, that will and that knowledge of, how to properly manage their finances, it leaves you little to no room left to plan for your future. It's ridiculous.
What's surprising to me, and I agree with you 100%, what's surprising to me is that Republicans believe in this trickle-down economics. They believe that if we lower the taxes for the rich, they'll provide more jobs and they'll pay more money. But that's not true, because you have the three owners of Walmart who each one of them individually are worth over $40 billion. Mm-hmm. But they sit up there and say to you, we can't afford to pay all of our workers $15 an hour. You already got $40 billion, okay, each.
Right. And
so you're telling me that you cannot pay all of your workers a minimum of $15 an hour. You're telling me that. So the trickle-down economics does not work, because these rich people are not going to invest in their workers. They're not going to do it. They're going to get richer and richer and richer, and they're going to pay out as little as they can to the people that are employed with them. There's no way three people who own a company should be worth over $100 billion and then sit up there and say we can't afford to pay all of our workers a minimum of $15 an hour.
Especially when, let's look at a company like Walmart. I don't remember the exact numbers. I researched it a while ago. But you look at a company like Walmart, the differential between your lowest level employees and your high level management is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And it's like, I'll piggyback off what you said. It's funny because the reason why that trickle-down effect is fundamental to me, why it doesn't make sense. Rich people don't shop at the same places that the middle and lower class people in America shop at. And for rich people, there's only so many pair of pants you can buy. There's only so many cars you can buy. At a certain point, the money that rich people are spending only benefits other rich people. You're not walking into a Ford or a Toyota dealership if you're a millionaire. You're walking into a Audi dealership or a Mercedes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not spending money at the same places. And so it only benefits that small community, that 10, 15%, I don't know, whatever it is, of the people who are, I'm not talking about the 1%, that's different. But the people who are, who make more than 6 and 8 figures, that's a very small percentage compared to the dwindling middle class and the lower class. Yeah. It's the middle class and the lower class that drives the economy. We're the people that work every day and we spend the money that we spend because we don't have a choice. We spend that money on goods that are non-durable that needs to continually be purchased. So It doesn't make sense fundamentally that if you lower taxes for the rich, that's gonna trickle down to the consumers. How? It doesn't make sense.
It should, but the integrity of the people who have this money does not exist. Their concern is getting richer. They don't have to get richer. You understand what I'm saying? They can afford this, but they're worried about they need to make a certain amount of. Listen, if I'm at $40 billion, I can guarantee you I'm good. I don't need to make more money. As long as I break even every year, I'm fine. If I'm like in my 60s and I've accumulated all of these billions of dollars, why do I need to constantly keep making more? We in our lifetime will see a trillionaire. Mm-hmm. That has been, and the fact that we live in a country where there's like over 2 million homeless, starving children, we should not have trillionaires. We shouldn't even have as many billionaires or millionaires as we have when we live in a country where there's so many people struggling, so many people starving. Like, how does that happen? If you got a trillionaire in your country, everybody should be okay. Mm-hmm. Everybody should be okay. No one should have that much wealth. You know what I mean? Period. It's like your integrity has to step in. Like, I could not comfortably live with myself knowing I have all of this money and I turn on the TV and I see people struggling, people, can't find a job, can't pay their bills. And I'm talking about hardworking, good, decent people. And when I talk to people who are on the right, like more right-wing conservative people, they will sit up when they're discussing poor people or people that are struggling, they almost want to put the blame on them and say they didn't work hard enough, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. If you want to make more money, get a better job. If you want to do this, but here's the thing: we live in a capitalist society, so that means there's always going to be poor people. They're always going to be there, and these people do jobs that are beneficial to our economy, that is beneficial to the United States, and they need to be protected and they need to be taken care of because they're always going to be there. Because if every low-income person quit their jobs right now, this country will fall apart.
It's finished. It's finished.
And in a matter of days, we will collapse. So we need to take care of these people. They're always going to be there and they're always going to exist, and they're not always to blame because they're in this position that they're in. You know, we need to always take care of these people. If we don't live in a society where everybody could do really good. We just don't live there. Our society is not set up for that. It's always going to be people struggling, you know.
Yeah, and this is a capitalistic society, and I do understand the separation of class and, you know, different social groups and all that. And I do understand that there's always going to be haves and have-nots. But here's the problem, though. On the 14th, I forget if that was Friday. I forget when the 14th was, but USA Today put out an article. For people who don't know, at the end of 2014, the city of Seattle initiated they passed a citywide law for the city of Seattle. They were going to raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour over the spread of 4 years. But now USA Today put out this article basically talking about how it's screwing over the economy in Seattle and it's caused a lot of people to be laid off, and they're really trying to discourage other cities and states from following suit. And I think California has a similar a law in place, and I think New York City is following as well to raise their minimum wages to $15 an hour. I forget by what year. But I feel like the arguments are not factual. Like, I feel like people saying that raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which in my opinion, as a minimum, would be a livable wage. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of these companies and these people that get in these backroom meetings are trying to discourage these cities and states from doing that because they don't want the consumer to have that power back. They want it to be exactly the way it is. They want that unbalanced scale.
Of course. But see, what we need to put in place and what needs to be talked about, and what I'm, emailing my congressmen and senators and everybody about is that with a raise of minimum wage, we also need to figure out a way to protect our small business owners, because those are the ones that are going to suffer a lot too, because a lot of them truly can't afford to pay a $15 minimum wage to a lot of their employees. My problem is with the larger, companies and businesses that can afford it, that won't do it or pretend they can afford it. But we need to put some systems in place to protect small business owners. You know what I mean? And myself, who is a future small business owner, I'm thinking to myself, wow, am I going to be able to afford to pay a full-time employee $15 an hour? I probably won't be able to, and provide them health care. So we need to, in a way, get these corporations to say, yes, you can afford it, so you need to do it. Let's put some protections in place for small business owners where they can afford to still pay their employees a full-time salary and to provide them health care and things like that, because that's the middle ground that's missing. And I think a lot of corporations, they use small business owners as a way to say, okay, well, certain companies can't afford to do this, so it's not good. But your company can, though. So don't sit up there and align yourself with small business owners because they can't afford it when you can. You know what I mean? And that's what I have a problem with. But we definitely need to address small business owners, entrepreneurs, startups. We need to provide some sort of protection for them so they can afford to pay. And they can afford to expand, because the thing is, too, if you want to expand your company, say it's just you and you're the company, you want to start hiring employees, you have to pay them what the minimum wage is, and that could be very, very tough on somebody who's trying to expand a new company. So we also need to kind of address that. And I definitely want to know what your take.
Good, because here.
What do you think about small business owners and entrepreneurs who want to
I'm glad
do
you
that?
just said that. And for the people who, it's a good segue, for the people who say, well, there's really no way for them to separate that out. Okay, well, here's some more facts for you. West Virginia, the Virgin Islands, which is also considered to be territories of the United States, they have already similar laws in place as it pertains to state minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
In the Virgin Islands, for the state minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, except for businesses with a gross annual receipt and sales of less than $150,000 a year. For those smaller businesses, their mandated minimum wage is $4.30 an hour. In Virginia, the state minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. This is only applicable to employers of 4 or more employees at a single location.
Nice.
In West Virginia, the state minimum wage is $8.75 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
This is only applicable to employers of 6 or more employees at one location. So the system is in place for them to separate out a way for small business owners to still pay their employees, a decent wage, but not put themselves in bankruptcy or out of business doing so.
Yeah.
Now, here's the problem, though. Small businesses, unfortunately, and, you were born in what, the late 70s, Ty? I was born in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Reaganomics pretty much killed the small business.
Of course.
Killed it. That's when we started to see all of the mom and pop operations and those pillars of the communities that
mm-hmm.
kept communities thriving, pretty much put them out of business.
Yeah.
Now, how we can develop a way to bring the small business back, I don't know. I mean, do you penalize the corporations? Do you tax them higher? Do you put into place penalties for them, closing shop? Because look, we grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. For people who don't know, who know Paterson now, it's depressing. It's a shell of what it used to be. You go back to the 50s, the 60s. Patterson had all the major factories, the silk factories, the bear factories.
Silk City, man. It was named Silk City for a reason. Yeah.
Patterson had a lot of upper class.
Yeah.
And as soon as those corporations and those companies found out that they could find loopholes in the system by closing down those locations and going overseas for cheap labor, it was pretty much, and you see the same thing in Detroit. Look at what's going on with Detroit right now. It's the times of people graduating high school and being able to find a job to support their families and buy a home and buy a car and do all the things they need to do with nothing more than a high school education ended when all of these factories closed.
Oh my God! It's even with college educations, people are struggling.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, there was a time in this country. People forget what birthed the middle class in the first place, what created the middle class, what created the opportunity for so many people to be able to move to the suburbs, have a nice neighborhood to raise their kids in. The birth of that middle class that is dying out right now was because of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
It was the fact that we, as a country, we were ahead, of the fray. We wanted to make sure that we were developing, that we were doing things at home, that we were providing products that were made right here that could be bought and sold and manufactured right here. We don't have that anymore, and so we
don't have it.
Coming back.
And these industries still exist, but you know what they do? They hire temps. Exactly. They hire for 3 months. They lay them off.
Exactly.
They chill for a hot minute, and they hire a new set of temps. And typically, these are undocumented workers. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily hiring Americans because Americans can't afford to live on the wages that they're paying. Nor can Americans afford to work for 3 months and to be out of work for 3 months or to just not have health care, and it's a pretty scary prospect because I feel like, again, how we talked about in a couple of podcasts ago, how education is so important, and that's something we need to severely invest in because we're not living in a society where you can get a job just on a high school education. You need some sort of some vocational training in every single aspect of everything that you do because everything is computers. Before, when you wanted to be a mechanic, you just had to know how to work on a damn car. Now you got to know how to work on a damn car and know how to do coding and computer programming because everything is computerized. Everything. Even working in a restaurant, you need to be a computer expert. It's just insane.
I don't know if it's still true, but last I checked, it was. China what they used to do, and I think they still do it if I'm not mistaken, in certain parts, they actually assign their citizens homes. You don't have to go out and try to purchase, out of your way to try to afford and purchase homes. I know that there's states like Canada where it's nationwide health care. Now, why can't they put in a system where, look, we're taxed anyway on what we make, right? And it's ridiculous. And that's not something that we have a choice. It's always funny to me when people say, oh, I'm a taxpayer. No fucking shit. If you work a job and you get a paycheck, you're a taxpayer. It's not by choice. Because if you don't do it, then you know what's going to happen. The IRS is coming after you and they're going to take whatever you have.
Yeah.
If we're going to be taxed anyway, why not make it to where healthcare is nationwide for everyone, and it is what it is, and it's not something that's going to fall on the business owners to have to worry about if we're already being taxed anyway. That will allow, in my opinion, that will allow the small businesses to pay a slightly better wage, because a lot of them do want to pay their employees a decent wage, because you keep employees that way, you keep your turnaround low, and that costs money for companies. I work at a company and in a department. I work in insurance, and I'm a physical damage adjuster. The department that I work in is such a high turnaround because the caseload is so heavy, and this company has to put people through all this training. And I work for a company that globally is pretty much the largest insurance company in the world. And the cost to continue to hire and train people is ridiculous when you have people who keep leaving for one reason or another. Now, that's a heavy burden on these companies, and that's why a lot of small business owners would like to keep the good employees that they have. The problem is you can't keep people if you can't pay them a decent wage.
Wait, what's your title again? Physical damage?
Yeah, I'm a PD adjuster, physical damage adjuster.
Okay.
So basically, you get into a car accident, I'm the person who needs to figure out whose fault it was, figure out what needs to be paid out, and get that done. And that's as it pertains to vehicles. But as I said, the caseload is so heavy to where I'm 50 to 55 to 60 years a week. You know what I'm saying? And it's only so much when you have 3,000 employees at one location. It's only so much you can pay, each employee an hour, and I understand that.
Yeah.
If something else needs to be done, I don't necessarily put the onus solely on the corporations, because it's the government who allows these lobbyists, these figureheads, these CEOs and these corporations to come in and dictate how things work, and that's not the way that it should be.
When the top 1% owns 50% of the country, it's a problem. It's an absolute problem, and I don't understand why people feel like there's room for everybody at the top, because there's not. And the problem is the Republican Party did such a good job at convincing poor white America that they're their answer, and they're not your answer, people. They're not your answer. They're going to take your money, and they're going to take your votes, and they're going to get richer and richer and richer while you suffer. And the biggest issue I have with poor white America, especially in the Midwest, especially in the coal industry, is that they abandon you in the 50s. They abandon you in the 60s. They do not care. You know what I'm saying? They do not care because you're poor. It doesn't matter if you match their skin color. Money talks. And you sit up there and you voted for a businessman, you voted for a billionaire who put other billionaires in his cabinet. And I'm telling these people right now, they do not care about you. And I don't understand how you think somebody who's a billionaire, who's been a millionaire all his life, his father, Donald Trump's father was a millionaire. This man has no recollection of what it's like to struggle and to live a hard life. You know what I mean? He has no clue. He is not in touch with real people. He does not know what our struggles are. To put him in office to fix the country is disgusting, because money isn't our only issue.
Right. And I think
is it a huge issue? Absolutely. Can a businessman in the White House help? Absolutely. Not as the president. Not as somebody who's vulgar, who is disgusting, who has no manners, who is basically a big 5-year-old who wants to come at everybody who came at him. It's when did Obama find time to attack the media who attacked him? When did he find? Did he ever say? Go ahead, sorry.
No, it's fine. As a president, you shouldn't have the time or the energy to do that with all the
issues
that are going on domestically and abroad. But here's the problem. And this is why I don't blame the average consumer, the average citizen, the average voter. These rich politicians do such a good job. And remember, Donald Trump is a reality star.
He's not a politician.
First. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I said he's a reality star.
Yeah.
They do a good job at selling to the average citizen, the average voter, the average consumer, that it's not their fault. They do a very good job at pointing the blame at other people.
Yeah.
And look, I don't even necessarily discredit the major corporations as much because, look, if you run a business and your sole purpose is making sure that that business stays in the black, and that meaning, for those of you who don't really know what that term means, the meaning staying profitable, of course you're going to try to cut corners where you can. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The problem is the government puts the cost of doing business on the employee, the low-level employee, and the cost of doing business should be on that corporation. It shouldn't be on the employee. But we're the ones that are paying the price when we're the ones who are spending the little bit of money that we make on those same corporations. Henry Ford had the best business model. If you pay the people that work for you a better wage, they're going to spend that money helping to support the corporation they work for. It's common sense.
Yeah, and the Republican Party believes it's the other way around. Don't pay them a lot of money. Mm-hmm. You keep more of your money, but you'll provide more jobs. So you basically have more jobs for people who can't even afford to live.
They sell that because they know the opposite is true, and that's why when Ford did it, and he started paying people more than everybody else was paying them, which allowed all those employees to go buy those Ford vehicles that they were making on the assembly lines, they tried to sue him. They tried to sue Ford. All of these other corporations were pissed off because they know that when you put the power back into the hands of the consumer, that's how you keep the economy thriving. But they don't want that. They need that separation because that's where their power comes from. You're naturally inclined to think that, oh, this person has all this money, they run all these businesses, they must know what they're talking about. So it just perpetuates the system.
Yeah.
So it comes back to the question. Who do you blame, and who do you go to fix the problem? It has to start with the government. To me, it has to.
It's hard because now we're living in a Republican-run government, and Republicans, when it's convenient for them, believe in small government. They don't want the government to interfere. Like a friend of one of my coworkers is a Republican. He believes in small government. He doesn't even want the government telling companies what the minimum wage should be. He thinks that everybody, and the problem with state-mandated minimum wage, which I don't support, I think we need a federal level minimum wage, is because it takes nothing for these companies to say, you know what, my company's in New York State, you want to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour, fine. I'm taking my company to Ohio. Now you got all of these New York City or New York State workers out of jobs. So let me go to Ohio where I can pay them where I want to. It's just the same way how we ship jobs overseas. And then, now one thing that the Republican Party
domestically, of course.
Yeah, of course. Now, one thing that I supported with the Republican Party, which they really fought hard to enforce the Democrats to get on board with, is to penalize companies who want to ship their jobs overseas. And that's one of the things that I definitely love about the Republican Party, that they definitely did that, and they did that long before it was popular. And Obama definitely was on board with it, but prior to that, Democrats was not having that. I don't know why. I don't understand why, but I was a kid then when this was all going on, so it's like now as an adult I can understand, like, no, ma'am, you cannot take our jobs, ship them overseas, and think that it's just going to be okay, you know?
Here's the problem, too, and it's a big misconception, and, you know, it definitely is something that we need to stay mindful of. The federal government tomorrow can say the federal minimum wage is going to be $15 an hour, and that's it. And most people will shout, great. Here's the problem. In this nation that we live in, what I call the United Divided States of America, the federal government doesn't mean shit. Because the federal government can say minimum wage is $15 an hour, but unless you're a federal employee, it does not affect you. Because when you have these states that implement their own state rights and they have their own power to implement rules and laws within the borders of that state, they can still say it's $10 an hour and there's nothing that the employee can do about it. And that's the problem. Yeah. There needs to be a clearer, I understand the reason and the point of the checks and balances of power. I get that. But when and this is what I touched on before, you know, and some episodes back, you can't have too much of a monarchy, a dictatorship type of government, but you also can't have too much of everybody saying, I'm going to do my own thing over here. There has to be someone, some system somewhere that says, look, this is what it's going to be and this is what it needs to be, and that's it.
I mean, I can understand, like...
I understand, look, not to cut you off. I understand minimum wage. There should be. But it shouldn't be minimum wage. It should be a minimum livable wage. And if that was the case, everybody would be fine.
I'm all for states implementing their own minimum wage. What I think the government should do, and it's something like you just said, the government should establish a minimum living wage per state, because obviously in certain states it's different. The amount of money that you're going to spend for a home, for health care, for food and gas and all of that, they should establish that and then say, okay, well, your state needs to pay people at least this. And then that state could say, okay, well, this is going to be our minimum wage. Mm-hmm. You can either pick what the government says, or you can just do your own, go your own way.
Here's what they should do. I'll piggyback off what you just said. And as I'm thinking about it in my head, I'm not a politician, I'm not an expert, I'm not an analyst, I'm not any of those things. But here's what I think they should do, and I think it will work perfectly. And I think anyone would be hard-pressed to disagree with it, although it'll never happen. Fantasy hour. The federal government should say, this is what the federal minimum wage is going to be. And let's say it's $15 an hour. And for all the states that say, fuck you, our minimum wage is $9, $7, $8, $11, whatever, the federal government should say, fine. We subsidize corporations and companies. Let's subsidize the employees, the consumers, the citizens. And for any state that doesn't want to agree to pay their workers at whatever the federally mandated minimum wage is, let's say it's $15 an hour, the government should offset it. If you're going to pay me in Idaho $8 an hour or $7 an hour when the federal minimum wage is $15, then the government should come in and subsidize that difference. And I think that if that was done, I think that would help a lot as well. I think that would eliminate the problem. Mm-hmm. Penalize the states, initiate a minimum wage that's livable across the federal government, and then penalize those states that don't want to raise their minimum wage to that, you know what I mean, to whatever that mandate is. Penalize those states and then subsidize those workers.
It's interesting because the people who are against raising minimum wage are people who just kind of been successful their whole lives. They don't know what it's like to go through a struggle. And I just feel like these are the ones that blame welfare recipients, and blame this and blame that, and it's everybody else's problem, But you don't understand that life throws people curveballs that you have no way of knowing how to handle,
Let's not even look at it like that.
Well, sometimes you're born into that,
Of course, but even if we don't look at it like that, because I know we all like to look at those menial jobs, those minimum wage type jobs as being less than respectable. Though there's never going to be enough jobs in the upper tier for everyone in this world.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, exactly.
You're always going to need, even those rich people, you're going to need someone to wash your car. You're going to need a waiter or waitress to serve you when you go to dinner. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be a need for those, as they call it.
That's why I said it. It's always going to be poor people. Exactly.
So the thing is, it's like you're only benefiting by paying those people more money. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like to me, it just makes sense on an elementary level.
Yep. No, I agree 100%, and it's something that we definitely got to keep pressing on and keep talking about. Mm-hmm. Email your congressmen, your senators, your governors, your mayor, your assemblymen, like the assembly people. Please be in touch with these people because they are responsible. They are our voice, and if we don't contact them, we don't put pressure on them, things are going to continue to go the way they're going. I know a lot of people think, on both sides of the fence, whether you're Republican or Democrat, a lot of people want an increase in minimum wage. A lot of people do, and we need to kind of get on this. You know what I mean? Yes, is it going to hurt some businesses? It might, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, I think it's going to level out. I think it's going to be better for our economy. I think it's going to be better for our country.
Well, in this microwave society that we live in, of course, it's going to take time, and it's going to be It's going to be
change hurt
at first to a lot of these businesses because it's been done wrong for so long.
Yeah.
The problem is, at a certain point, when you reach that point of critical mass, when you really think about it logically, it can only help. Because when you talk about the people who have to live and work and consume in the same cities and states, the same communities, that they're restricted to, it can only help at some point, because those same businesses that say we can't afford to pay you this, keep in mind that the reason why your business is at the level that it is right now is because so many people can't afford to shop at those businesses. And even the people that can, they can't afford to spend, past a certain point.
Yeah.
If you start paying those people more, that money has no choice but to trickle down back to the business owner.
And not only, and everything you're saying is 100% true, but also the fact that you are going to provide people with a better service. I read a comment about a year and a half ago with a friend of mine, which I was disgusted by his comment, by the way, even though he's a friend of mine. He basically criticized on Facebook a McDonald's worker by saying, you can't even make a fucking burger right and you want $15 an hour. My response to him was, this is what you get for paying somebody $7.50 an hour. Do you want better service? Pay people better, because that person making $7.50 an hour probably was working a 12-hour shift, probably didn't get any breaks, probably lived in a poor environment, probably lived in a stressed-out environment, probably has health issues, could possibly have drug issues, could have possibly any amount of things going on in their life because they cannot afford to take care of it. And my final word on this subject, because I'm going to give my final word, Kevin will give his after, but my final word on this subject is that minimum wage needs to be increased. We need to protect our low-income people because they're doing the jobs that not only need to be done, that has to be done to sustain our society. They have to be protected. Stop treating them like they're criminals. Stop treating them like they're the problem, because those jobs and those people always need to be here. As long as you don't want socialism, you don't want communism, fine. You want capitalism. Guess what? You got to take care of these people because they're always going to exist. We have to take care of them. We got to pay them what they're worth, and we have to treat them with the respect and dignity that they deserve so they can provide us a better service to make this country a better place to live in. This is not about appeasing billionaires, appeasing millionaires. It's about appeasing the people who work hard, who break their back, who are on their feet all day. Take care of them, period. That's Tyrone's final word.
That's it. Look.
All right, Kevin, what's your final word?
I couldn't have summed it up any better myself. Stay close to the local politicians if they get to the national level, because that's where you can stop them if you don't agree with them, and that's where you can put the people in power who need to be in power. It starts locally. Don't pay so much attention to the national election and forget about the local elections. This is where these people are sneaking in, and then you wonder how they got there, and then it's too late. It's like the Rip Van Winkle effect. It's like you're either going to be one of those people who are on the foot of what's going on the pulse of what's going on, or you go to sleep and you wake up one day and say, what the hell just happened? If you listen to this podcast and you think we talk a lot of shit, we're too opinionated, yeah, that's true, but we're that by design. But we don't do it, for the purpose of just talking shit. We do it because we're trying to bring a community closer together. We don't pretend to know everything, but we promise to always bring it to y'all straight with no chaser. We'll see you in the next one.
No, actually, before we cut out, because I just got a text my appointment is going to be a little bit late. I actually
wait till I do the sign off and then say.
No, I didn't know you was going to go in there. I didn't know you was going to. But really good job. What's the final word, and then we go into. All right, here's the thing, really, really quickly I want to do, because I always want to make sure that people who do reach out to us and talk to us, we do respond back. And you posted a meme about illegal immigration, and a good friend of mine who I met when I used to live in the Poconos, Paul Strunk, commented on it, so I wanted to know if you wanted to kind of dab into that like a tiny bit. It was about immigration.
I did want to mention that, and I was only cutting it short because you said you didn't have to.
Yeah, no.
So,
audience, that's my fault. That's my fault. I misled Kevin. All right, go ahead, man.
And I was real glad, and that's what I'm hoping to. If y'all look, I'm looking at the numbers, and we're getting some people who are definitely tuning into our podcast, and I know it. So follow the Facebook page, follow the Twitter page at Straight Talk 315, STR8 TLK 315. And comment. When I post these things, it's meant to start discussions. And so that gentleman commented, and I definitely respected him. And I definitely joined in and said, I also could jump in as well. just, comment more, pay attention, don't just listen and then have whatever opinions you have quietly into yourself. Jump in and join the conversation.
Exactly. All right, so you want to go in and talk about that meme real quick?
Yeah, go ahead. What was it? I had found this meme online. Let me see if I can pull it up so I don't misquote it. I saw it online, and I typically do this when I come across something that strikes a chord with me. I'll share it to the various platforms that we have, the Straight Talk No Chaser, the Life Relationships and everything in between platform, just to see, if people are going to react or respond to it. Mm-hmm. So this meme that I found, the title is, as I wait for it to pull up, the title is The Problem with Illegal Immigration. And then it kind of draws this contrast and these comparisons between you have John, who is, the quintessential American citizen, middle-class, blue-collar worker, or whatever. And then they have Juan, the illegal immigrant, coming here to steal our jobs, whatever. Yeah. And then they kind of break down the different scenarios. And so on the first level, it says both have a wife and 2 children and live in Arizona. And then you have John on one side with his wife and his 2 kids. And then you have Juan on the other side with his wife and their 2 kids. Mm-hmm. And then on the second tier, it says, John legally works in construction, has a Social Security number, and makes $25 per hour with taxes deducted. And then on the next tier, it goes on to say, Juan illegally also works in construction, has no Social Security number, and gets paid $15 an hour in cash under the table. And then the next tier goes on to break down that John, the legal worker, earns $25 an hour. That's at a 40-hour work week, so he makes about $1,000 per week, or $52,000 a year. John legally now has $36,400 at the end of the year. And then it breaks down Juan's income, and it says Juan illegally earns $15 per hour, 40 hours a week, for $600 per week, or $31,200 per year. Now, Juan illegally, he pays no taxes, so he still has $31,200 at the end of the year with no taxes being taken out. And then it says John, the legal worker, seems to be in better shape, and then it draws the contrast, and it says John, who's the legal worker, pays medical and dental insurance with limited coverage for his family at $500 per month, or $7,200 a year. Then it goes on to say John makes too much money and is not eligible for food stamps or welfare, so he pays $500 per month for food, or $6,000 a year. And then it goes on to further say, oh, hold on, just lost it. Got to get it back. I'll edit that out.
That's for good, man. Keep it in, man. Live. We're live. We're live, guys. Come on.
No editing. No edit. All right, so it says, so he has to pay $500 a month for food, and that's equivalent to $6,000 a year. And then it says he pays rent of $1,200 per month, which is pretty average. He probably has a 3-bedroom, which is pretty average, depending where you live, and that's around $14,400 a year. Now, he only has $8,800 left. They didn't account for car payment, car insurance, whatever, luxuries, utility bills. They didn't account for any of that. So it says Juan, the illegal worker, has full medical and dental coverage through the state and local clinics and emergency hospitals at a cost of $0 per year. Mm-hmm. Juan also has no documented income, and now he's eligible for food stamps, WIC, and welfare. He also receives $500 per month for federal rent subsidy, and so he pays out $500 per month, or $6,000 a year. So still at the end of the year, they say that Juan, the illegal worker, has $31,200 left, because that $500 that he was paying is subsidized by the government. So then at the end, with a little sad face for John, the legal worker, it says John has to make $8,800 stretch to pay utilities, gasoline, toys, clothes, malfunctioning car or appliances, etc. for the entire year. John now has to work overtime on Saturdays or get a part-time job after work, which, of course, leaves less time for family and things like that. And now Juan has a smiley face, and it says that Juan has to make $31,200 stretch to pay utilities, gasoline, etc., and what he sends out of the country back to whatever family, that he may be supporting back home. Mm-hmm. and he has nights and weekends off to enjoy with his family. And they've got a little picture with, some construction and police and fire and all that stuff. And now they're saying at the very, very end, but John paid for them and Juan didn't. Because they're talking about, construction on our public roads, police services, fire department services. And so they're basically saying that for those of us who work legally and pay our taxes, we pay for those services. And they're saying that the illegal, undocumented workers who take advantage of those services as well, that they don't pay for them. So what are your thoughts on that? Because that was my caption. I just said, and that's it.
First of all, my knowledge, and as a 37-year-old grown man who grew up in a community surrounded by illegal immigrants, I'm going to tell you this article is fucking bullshit. Absolute bullshit. I'm sorry, I know immigrants, I know illegal immigrants, and the way they're portraying this article is like they're living the good fucking life. They're just going to work. They care.
It's the same thing that they're saying about people who are on unemployment.
One of my employees literally works 3 jobs and he's an illegal immigrant. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Like, no, this is not happening in this country. These people are not living the good life. This is a grown man in his 40s with 2 children, and it's 5 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Don't give me this fucking bullshit that they're making all of this money. First of all, immigrants do pay taxes. First of all, I don't know who in God's creation thinks that immigrants are getting paychecks and not paying taxes. I'm going to tell you something right now. If they're getting paid under the table, it ain't going to be $15 an hour. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you that. And very, very, very few. First of all, you cannot make a living wage under the table, period. No person who's going to pay somebody under the table is going to pay you that much money. Right. I'm not giving you $50,000 a year under the table. That just doesn't happen. To make a living wage in this country, to live that kind of lifestyle that they say, no employer is going to pay an illegal immigrant $30,000 to $35,000 a year under the table. Are you out of your fucking mind? Like, this is not happening. Like, this hits me off to the end. Like, literally, don't understand. Like, because people believe this. People believe this, and this is what is so absurd. A business owner is not going to pay an illegal immigrant $30,000 to $35,000 a year under the fucking table. Are you out of your mind? Because when you got somebody work a few under the table, they're desperate. They're going to take whatever they get. You're not going to get them $15 fucking an hour. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're going to be getting Jersey and black on this page.
And look, hang on 1 second.
Oh, my goodness. Like, literally, this irks me to the fucking core. And let's look at really quickly, though.
But hold on. Wait.
Let me read Paul Strunk. Let me read Paul Strunk's comment.
I want to comment on that one thing that you said before I lose my train of
thought. All right, go ahead.
Even if we take for granted that there are some people out there who are paying undocumented workers cash under the table for this amount, let's just take for granted and say that there are companies out there doing this. These undocumented workers who come here are trying to realize the same dreams of their lives and their families and their future that we are. They just happen to not have papers because they're not from here. But who do you blame? Do you blame the illegal worker who's able to go out and hustle and find someone who's willing to pay him $15 an hour cash under the table? Do you blame that worker? Or do you penalize that company that's doing that? Because if the company's doing it, then it's the company that's taking away your jobs. It's not the illegal worker.
Of course, and that's the thing we don't look at. These Republicans want to sit up here and blame the people, but you don't want to blame the company that's basically. Let me tell you something right now. There's a lot of rich people who do not want this wall to come into fruition, but they don't want to say anything because they want to preserve their Republican values, but they know damn well they're making money off the backs of these immigrants. They know they are. They know they are, and they don't want to say it. They want to
have cleaners and they have cooks in their mansions. Let's go check all of their Social Security.
Exactly. So I'm gonna read Paul Strunk, who was kind enough to post on the Straight Talk No Chaser Facebook page, which is at Straight Talk 315 STR8TLK 315, and his comment towards this post was, and you guys got to go read this post. is absolutely insane. Yes, and please comment, like, and subscribe and do the whole 9 yards. But he said there are so many challenges with this portrayal, including the boss's ability to give the immigrants zero rights, thus making him practically a slave. This must have been created by a very dumb conservative individual, as is the world they believe and not the real world.
Yep,
Amen,
exactly.
sis. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
And here's my comment. This is proof positive that if you guys interact with us and participate in these discussions, I, myself, or Ty, or both of us will definitely participate and respond and comment back. So here was my comment back. I said, definitely not the real world. And if conservatives got what they wanted, if America was made great again, in quotations, we will have lost everything that made this nation what it is. You can't remove or disassociate the same people and cultures who built this country in the first place and still expect it to thrive.
Exactly.
You can't.
It literally, the article irked me to the core because I literally just was not having it. It's like, don't sit up here. Listen, I worked under the table. My brother worked under the table. My father worked under the table. You can't. No, we were not giving living wages. We said, this is what we can give to you, and that's that. We're not providing you a life where you are going to be able to pay rent, buy a car, pay health insurance, go buy food, go live go live that. Like, are you serious? Like, that never happened.
And this is like basic human kind of thought process to me.
Yeah.
Also remember and pay attention to this too. Before you complain that this person is working right next to me and they're doing this and they're doing that and they're making this, but it's under the table and they're not paying for these taxes and that and whatever, keep in mind too also that with that under the table $15 an hour comes. There's no workers' comp. There's no insurance. If Juan falls on the job and gets hurt, he's not making anything.
He's done. He's done for the day.
Exactly. If Juan doesn't perform the way he's supposed to, he can't go to a union or the Department of Labor or get an attorney to represent him or go to human resources. He doesn't have these rights. He's essentially a slave. He's essentially a slave.
He is a slave.
And for all the people who complain, forget the protections that we do have. And you really don't think that Juan wouldn't give anything to have those same protections? These people don't want to come here and be under the radar and be not recognized. It's just that the system is so bogged down and the process takes so long and these people have to live. See, this country wants you to come here, go through the proper process, in order to become a legal worker or a legal citizen. But the problem is you still have to live. You still have to survive. You still have a family.
Exactly. We built this country on the backs of immigrants, and we started with the goddamn African slaves. Let's be honest.
And it's the same. And it's my same argument for anybody who argues about people who, they get on welfare or they have food stamps or whatever the case, and you Republicans argue that they're getting a free ride. Well, the problem is the system almost makes it impossible for you to be motivated to go get a job because when you go get a job and you're making minimum wage, it's not enough for you to survive on.
And it's not a free ride being on welfare or food stamps because they're not giving you enough money to live.
No, but I'm gonna get to that too. But when you work at McDonald's and you're only making $200 to $300 a week, and you know that's not enough to live, but you know you can get $1,000 of welfare and another $300 with food stamps, the system is telling you that if you do this to survive, you're going to be better off than if you do this. And let's also talk about the people who talk about unemployment. Kiss my ass if that's a fucking handout.
Because we pay into that.
I open my paycheck and I look at what comes out of my paycheck, unemployment is definitely taken out of my paycheck. So if I find myself in a position or in a situation where I don't have a job for one reason or another and I go to collect unemployment, you're only giving me back a portion of what you've already taken away from me.
Exactly. So
these
don't even come from
that have been put into place by the government, have been put into place, what little few safety nets we do have, are put into place so that when you find yourself in a position where you can't provide for your family because the government does recognize on some level at least that it's about the consumer, and if we can't consume and if we can't go out and participate in helping the economy continue to rotate, then it's going to fail. The government knows that on some level, and that's why these safety nets are put into place. So if the government knows that, then it needs to do more. It needs to do better.
there are always going to be people that's going to abuse the system. That's going to happen, but you don't shut down the system because of abusers. It's going to happen, but the abusers are minimal, and I dare anybody to fight me on this because my mother worked 35-plus years for the Department of Social Services in Passaic County, New Jersey, which is one of the poorest counties in New Jersey. And she will tell you that most people on social services needed it. Yes, were there people abusing it who knew how to work? Absolutely, but they were very minimal. But you don't shut it down or decrease it. My mother herself was on welfare. My mother herself was on welfare. And if she didn't have that, I would not be here talking to you right now.
Right.
You know, she herself was on it.
That, but there's people who, they try to get over on the system. When you compare the number of people as a percentage who try to juke the system to the number of people who are legitimately trying to utilize the system to get ahead and get themselves on their feet, it's not even close. It's not even 1%. It's not even 1%.
But here's the thing. I don't even want to hear the bullshit about welfare when George Bush, when he was in office, gave billions to bail out the bank industry. It's like in the auto industry. Okay, you're not spending billions on welfare a year. You're barely spending millions. You gave these people billions and billions and billions of dollars to bail them out of the hole that they dug. But yet, the couple $100 million we spend on the poor is the problem. Not the billions of dollars we gave to the auto industry, not the billions of dollars we gave to the bank industry. That amount of money that they gave to the auto industry and the bank industry during the Bush administration will not be spent on welfare for the next 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years where you still won't even spend that much money on welfare, but you just gave rich people billions of dollars because they didn't know how to handle their coins. Like,
and look,
who's the problem?
And look, as we get ready to wind down, I will caution everybody to think too. Keep in mind too, it's balance. You can't have good without bad. For every system in place, whatever that system is, you're always going to have people who try to avert that system.
Absolutely.
You can't complain about crime without keeping in mind that without crime, you wouldn't have police officers. Those are jobs. You wouldn't have a need for, all these different services and things that are in place when bad things happen. That is all a part of this global ecosystem. It just is the way it is. So just keep that in mind, too.
Exactly.
Anything else, Ty?
No, man, I'm good. I'm just going to hit you guys up with the social media real quick.
Go ahead, and then I'll
All right, yes, so I just want you guys to know we are STR8. TLK315 at both Instagram and Twitter. If you want to hit us up at Gmail, it's going to be straight spelled out STRAIGHTTALK 315 at Gmail. My personal Twitter, Instagram, and Gmail is Tyrone Desperado. You can hit me up on all of those, Gmail, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. So.
Yes, sir. And definitely hit me up as well. Check out my YouTube channel where I definitely post all of our podcast episodes as well as the podcast episodes from my platform, Life, Relationships, and everything in between. And that YouTube can be found at youtube.com/Kevin C. Spool. The links are always in every episode that we upload, whether it be our Facebook platforms, Ty's, my personal ones. It's all there. Ty, do you have anything else to add?
Just want to give a quick shout out to Paul Strong, definitely for commenting on this subject. It's Straight Talk STR8 TLK315 at Facebook. That's where you hit us up at. That's where I post a lot of articles at, as well as
definitely take a page out of Paul's book. You see me post something, you see Ty post something. It's socially charged, it's politically charged. It affects all of us. Join in. Comment, join the discussion. That's why.
Comment, join the discussion, man. Hit us up, criticize us, yell at us, do whatever you gotta do, but be part of it.
I apologize for all the messiness in this episode. It just whatever. It's raw. No editing. It is what it is.
It's a messy show. Like, who cares? We got families, we got jobs, we live in the real world, and it's live. So
exactly. And look, it doesn't matter what issue we're talking about, whether it's minimum wage, whether it's illegal immigrants, whether it's the controversy and the fighting back and forth with us, you know, in other countries, whether it's the marriage issue with the LGBT community, whatever it is. There's so many things that we create for ourselves to separate us. There's really only a couple major things that separate us, and that's borders and oceans. Other than those two things, we're all just the same people trying to survive in a crazy-ass world and do the best that we can for ourselves, for our family members, for our loved ones. And if you keep that in mind, all we can do is just try to come together. And the only way we can do that is by talking about these issues. I'm not always going to be right. Ty's not always going to be right. But we're definitely passionate about everything that we come and bring to the table. And we ain't, you know, we're always going to get it to y'all straight. And that's exactly what we do. Whether you agree or disagree, that's fine. Just do it intelligently, participate, join the discussion, and we'll be back for another one soon.
All right.
All right, peace and love.